The Doodle Book, written, conceived, illustrated, and narrated by Stephen Amy. Video editing and original music by Artem Repin. This is Doodle. Doodle was the most famous cartoon character in the world. Toys, t-shirts, video games, storybooks, pudding cups, breakfast cereal, DVDs, dinner plates, action figures, dolls, and underwear. All you had to do was think of a product, and sure enough, you could find it somewhere with Doodle's face plastered across it. Everyone just adored Doodle and loved talking about his show and every little thing he did. It was because he was so cute. Now, Doodle loved being loved by everyone, but Doodle had a secret. You see, he wasn't happy inside. Not really. The truth was something itched in Doodle's mind. It was something he tried not to think about. Something he liked to avoid. The only thing Doodle knew about himself was that people thought he was cute. His whole life was based around being cute. He was the wealthiest, most beloved cartoon character in the whole world, and yet, it puzzled him as to why everyone liked him so much. Deep down, he knew he didn't really do anything useful. He had no idea what his purpose was. You see, his cartoons didn't really teach anybody anything useful. They didn't help anyone in any way. Doodle just acted cute, and everyone bought lots of stuff with his picture on it. Stuff that it seemed only distracted people from things that were truly important. There was something else that troubled Doodle. He didn't really know just what he was exactly. It seemed he was no thing in particular. He didn't know it, but that was exactly why people all over the world liked him so much. Because he didn't remind them of anything they might not like. Doodle began to wonder if everybody really loved him, or if he was only distracting people somehow with his cuteness. Sadly, the worse things seemed to get in the world, the more people paid attention to every little thing he did. Doodle needed to think. He went to his fancy apartment building, watched TV, and thought for a while. By the end of the evening, Doodle had a plan to get people to stop being distracted by all the meaningless, cutesy things he did on his show. The next day, Doodle went to work and began to do bad things on his show. Rude things. Mean-spirited things. He was sure that if he began acting like a jerk, people wouldn't think he was so cute. Then they would stop watching his show and notice what was happening in the world around them, and see that it needed much fixing. That, he thought, was much more important than his silly show. Imagine Doodle's surprise when instead of not liking him for being bad, more people began watching his show than ever before. Doodle products flew off the shelves. His plan hadn't worked. Now they thought it was funny to see such a cute little cartoon character do such awful things. They wanted Doodle to keep doing bad things on his show from now on. It wasn't long before new high-paying jobs were created to keep people thinking up bad things for Doodle to do on TV. It made Doodle sick to his stomach. He couldn't bear his natural cuteness being used in such a way. Doodle was stuck and he didn't know what to do. His plan had only made things worse. The more everyone watched Doodle do bad things, the more twisted people's thinking became. In time, everyone got used to his disgusting antics and they became bored with them. So now Doodle was given even meaner and nastier things to do, so people would keep watching and keep buying Doodle stuff. They didn't realize it, but many people had become lost, confused, cruel, and very unhealthy. The air was really dirty now, and the food with Doodle's picture on the boxes made people sick. But they all loved Doodle so much they coughed and laughed and ate it anyway. Everyone had forgotten how they used to be. Now everyone thought it was fun to tune in and see what hilariously cruel thing Doodle would do next. Doodle wasn't even cute anymore, but nobody noticed. Besides, now all the other cartoon characters acted just like Doodle. They all became louder and more shocking. They competed against one another to see who could be the most horrible by fighting, yelling, cursing, and beating each other up, with cute little cartoon grins on their faces all the while. Everyone seemed to love it. This is what people have come to think is funny, Doodle wondered. Doodle tore up his contract and quit his show. Nobody even noticed Doodle was gone. There was plenty of reruns on 3 times a day, and new Doodle products pumped out of the factories with no signs of slowing. Doodle just sat at home and watched TV for weeks. One day while watching TV, he began to feel sick. He watched a horrible gory lineup on every other channel and felt terrible about what he knew he had helped create. He tried playing video games instead of watching TV, but they were all the same. They were pointless. And when he had beaten all of his games, he had nothing to show for it, and nobody cared anyway, not even Doodle himself. He tried listening to music, but all of his music was just the same as the shows on TV. It didn't really mean anything. Most of the music was sad or angry, and it was created by angry, unhappy, confused people. Next he tried reading, but his favorite books were no different than music or TV. Doodle felt empty inside. He felt awful. It was kind of scary. All of Doodle's favorite things, which once seemed so important to him, no longer gave him any comfort. They just took up space in his apartment and collected dust. Doodle slowly began to realize the pointlessness of most of the things he had bought. All the things he used to do when he wasn't working were just like his show. They were distractions that only wasted his time. This irritated Doodle, and his irritation began to grow bigger and bigger. A strange, prickly feeling began to wash over him. Doodle got up and threw out his TV set, all of his video games, and most of his music and books. Doodle even threw out his entire collection of mint-in package, unopened, never been played with vintage, highly collectible, special edition, super bendable action figures. He felt great. Well, he did at first. Doodle sat down and looked at his now empty apartment. He stared at the spot where his TV used to be. Doodle became very nervous all of a sudden. What would he do now that all the stuff he used to fill his time with when he wasn't working was gone? Now the only thing Doodle could do was think, and it scared him. Doodle stared outside across the city and saw all the other buildings. It was then that he noticed a small dying plant in his windowsill a fan had once given him. Without thinking, Doodle went over to the little plant and gave it some water. For the next few days, Doodle didn't do much else except care for that little plant. He watered it and dusted its leaves. He even sat and talked to it as he ate his meals. One morning, Doodle woke up and decided to go to the plant shop. He bought all kinds of other plants for his empty apartment. Doodle began to spend every day caring for his plants, but somehow, he still wasn't happy. One lazy afternoon, as Doodle sat in his chair, he thought, "Ha! My apartment looks like a forest." It was in that moment that he had remembered a big hollow tree where he had grown up in the woods and how happy he had once been there when he was little. Doodle got up, left his apartment, and took a cab to his old childhood home. When he arrived, sadly, he found the forest he had grown up in was now only a weeded-out old lot in the middle of the city with a few withered trees and lots of garbage all around. He sat down on an old soda can and thought for a long time. After some thinking, Doodle went home. He packed up and left his apartment for good. He began planting all his plants on that abandoned little old lot. He made a small home for himself out of a hole in the ground, and he lived there. In time, other animals came to the lot, which thanks to Doodle had now become quite beautiful. Birds, squirrels, and bugs became his new neighbors. He had to admit his new home was nice, and other people began to notice too. Children and adults alike came to play there, or to just sit quietly and think. It was nice, but Doodle still felt like something was missing. When he went for walks, he was reminded of how much the world needed fixing and how sick and unhappy people were. He thought of moving to the country where there were more trees, cleaner air, and not so many tired, unhappy people. But somehow it just didn't seem right to abandon everyone in the city. But what could he do? One day, while walking, Doodle realized something. You see, somehow he had forgotten how incredibly wealthy he was. He was the most famous cartoon character in the world. It was then that a grand idea flooded into his mind, and Doodle went to the bank. He bought that old lot and all the other tired old lots in the city. He turned them into parks and gardens for people in the city to grow food on and play in. He turned them into places where people could sit and think. He used his fortune to tear down old buildings in ailing neighborhoods and had lots of fruit and nut trees planted. Doodle started going for walks more often, and when he did, he didn't feel so bad anymore. All over the city, window boxes full of flowers and lush green plants dripped down towards the streets below. People were even eating tomatoes that they had grown in their own apartments. As birds flew over the city, instead of rooftops, I now saw lots of little green oases full of happy, smiling gardeners. Trees, bushes, flowers, or good things to eat were planted anywhere there was space. With so many people helping, things changed for the better so quickly. There was, however, one thing that hadn't changed. Everyone still loved Doodle, even though no one talked about him anymore, or watched his show, or bought Doodle stuff. And finally, Doodle was happy.